I'm 91 years old. My husband died in a textile mill on a Tuesday in April 1979. I had 6 children sleeping in that house. The oldest was 18, the youngest was 9. My mother lived 12 miles down the road, and she did not cross the county line for us. Not once. Not that April. Not the April after. Not any April. If you are watching this, I bet somebody has already told you that you cannot do it alone. Maybe your husband is gone. Maybe your children are grown and it is just you and the wallpaper. Maybe you are staring down a bill you do not know how to pay, and there is nobody in the next room to look at you and say, "We will figure it out." Do you lie awake at night and count what you do not have? Do you feel like the world is waiting on you to give up so it can stop feeling sorry for you? Do you look at other women and wonder how they got the life you thought was going to be yours? Have you started making yourself smaller, so being alone hurts a little less? I want to sit with you for a while. My name is Eleanor Boone. I am 91. I live in the same little white house outside of Washington, Georgia, that James and I bought in 1958 for $8,700. Same house, same porch, same tin coffee can on top of the refrigerator. Except now what is in it is pennies for my great-grandchildren, not tips for the light bill. That Tuesday in April, I had chicken thighs in a cast-iron skillet. The radio was playing something about interest rates and Jimmy Carter. 6 children in the house. Robert was 18, home from his shift at the Piggly Wiggly, planning on the community college in Athens that fall. James Jr., we called him Jimmy, was 16 and had grease under his fingernails already. Grace was 14 and taller than me. Daniel had a chipped front tooth from a bicycle. Sarah could name every bird that landed on the fence. And Rebecca. Becca. My baby, 9 years old, wearing her brother's old sneakers because I had not gotten around to buying her new ones. Sheriff Thornton knocked on the screen door at 9:17 at night. He had known James since Little League. He took his hat off. He did not say anything for a long second. I said, "No." He said, "Mrs. Boone." And I put my hand flat on the kitchen counter because I needed something to hold on to that was not going to move. A carding machine at the mill. James was trying to clear a jam. Something snagged his sleeve. That is all I ever got. That is all anybody ever got. The company sent a check for $600 and a letter that used the word regrettable. $600. 6 children. You do that math however you want to. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the light on until Robert came out at 4 in the morning and sat down across from me. He did not say a word. He just put his hands flat on the table where I could see them. He was 18. He looked so much like his father in that light, I could not breathe for about a minute. My mother's name was Cora. She lived 12 miles down the road with her second husband, a man named Delbert who sold insurance. I called her the next morning from the wall phone in the kitchen while Robert was outside with the little ones. I said, "Mama, James is gone." She said, "I heard already." She said, "I told you not to marry him." She said, "You made your bed, Ellie." Then she asked me if I was still going to bring my green bean casserole to church on Sunday. I did not cry on that call. I said, "Yes, Mama." I hung up the receiver. Then I went in the bathroom and I turned on the shower so the children would not hear me, and I sat down on the floor with my back against the tub, and I stayed there until the water ran cold. Down the road from me was a woman named Mabel Harden. Her husband had died the winter before mine did, a heart attack in the barn. Mabel had 3 children. She sent 2 of them to her sister in Macon and kept the youngest at home. She married a man named Errol Sipe 11 months later. I do not judge her. I want to say that clearly. I have never once in 50 years judged Mabel Harden. But I looked at her that first spring, and I understood what a woman could do if she was tired enough. And I told myself, not me, not with mine. By the end of that summer I had 2 jobs. 10 at night to 5 in the morning, I cleaned the county courthouse and the high school. 6 in the morning to 11, I worked the breakfast counter at Dot's Diner on Main Street. Wanda Kemp owned Dot's, and she paid me in cash on Fridays and let me carry home whatever biscuits were left in the warmer. I slept from noon to 5 in the afternoon, while Robert made sure the little ones ate a sandwich and did their homework. Then I got up and cooked supper and packed 6 paper sacks for the next day and started the whole thing over. For 11 years. The first time I broke was October of 1979. I dropped a stack of plates at Dot's, and I stood there in the middle of the floor, and I could not pick them up. Wanda came out from behind the register, and she did not say a word. She got down on that floor with her 63-year-old knees, and she picked up every piece of broken china herself. She said, "Eleanor, sit down over there in the booth." She poured me a cup of coffee. She said, "Honey, you are not going home yet." I sat in that booth from 10 in the morning until noon, and I cried for an hour, and I ate 3 biscuits with strawberry jam, and I did not walk back out that door until I was ready to be a mother again. Pastor Whitfield came out to the house every other Friday for 2 years. He never once asked me if I needed prayer. He asked me if I needed the porch swept, if I needed the leak in the bathroom faucet fixed, if I needed a Bible on the kitchen table, because sometimes just having a Bible on the kitchen table is enough. Somebody asked me once how I did it. I told them what my grandmother used to say about the black widow spider that carries her babies on her back. They asked her, "How do you carry all that weight?" She says, "I don't. I carry 1 baby at a time." I looked at Robert every morning and I said, "What do you need today?" Then Jimmy, then Grace, then Daniel, then Sarah, then Becca. 6 times a day, every day, for 11 years. Until the last one drove out of the driveway in a used Toyota Corolla, and I stood in the yard in a bathrobe and did not cry until the car was around the bend. My granddaughter Danielle set this camera up in my kitchen this morning. She is 26 and she works from her laptop, and she thinks her grandma has stories worth listening to. If something I am saying is worth your time, tap that little button underneath that says subscribe, so Danielle keeps driving out here on Saturdays. She brings me a coffee from the place with the mermaid on it. I do not understand the mermaid. Now stay with me, because what I am about to say is the part I did not figure out until I was almost 80 years old. Working 2 jobs. That was maybe 30% of it. It was the loud part. It was the part the neighbors saw, and the part that got written up in the church bulletin in 1983. But the other 70%, the part that made the difference between 6 children who kept walking straight and 6 children who could have gone any direction, I want to save that for a minute, because it is the part I wish somebody had told my mother. Here is where mine are now. Robert became a teacher. 11th grade American history in a public school 2 counties over. He is 65 years old, and he still calls me every Sunday at 4 in the afternoon, and I still ask him if he is eating enough. Jimmy runs a paint and body shop outside of Elberton. Grace is a bookkeeper for a family of hog farmers, and she raised 3 of her own without missing a single piano recital. Daniel builds houses. Sarah is a librarian at a branch library that used to be a Baptist church. And Becca, my baby. Becca is a hospice nurse. She sits with dying people. She holds their hand. She has been in the room for more last breaths than most preachers. Becca called me a couple months back from a patient's driveway. She was between rooms. She said, "Mama, I have been thinking." I said, "About what, sugar?" She said, "What I do for work. You did in that kitchen for 11 years. You carried people who could not carry themselves. Only I get paid for it." Then she had to go because somebody was calling for her from down the hall. I sat in my chair after she hung up, and I stared at the wall for a long time. So, here is a 70%. Are you ready? It was not that I worked 2 jobs. Plenty of women in Wilkes County worked 2 jobs, and their children went sideways anyway. It was not discipline, though I gave them plenty. It was not church, though we went. It was not luck. It was this. In 11 years of raising them by myself, I never once let a single one of my 6 children see me look at them like they were a burden. Not once. I was tired. I was scared. I cried in the cab of that pickup on the way to clean the courthouse at 9:45 every night for a whole year. But when I opened the door of my house and one of them looked up from the kitchen table, my face said, "There you are." My whole life just walked into the room. Children know. They know if you look at them like they cost you something, and they grow up trying to prove they were worth what they cost. Or they grow up knowing they were the reason you kept getting up in the morning. Mine grew up knowing. You asked me at the beginning. Well, I asked you. Do you lie awake at night counting what you do not have? I did that for 11 years. Then one morning at Tots, Wanda came around the counter with the coffee pot and she said, "Eleanor, did you know Robert wrote a paper about you at school? Mrs. Kittrell had them write about the person they most want to become. He wrote about his mama." I did not know that. My oldest son was 15 years old, and I did not know that. And standing at that coffee pot at 5 in the morning, I understood I had been counting the wrong things all year. I had been counting hours. I should have been counting the eyes on me at supper. My mother, Cora, lived to be 94 years old. In her last week, I sat with her in a nursing home in Elberton, and she took my hand and she said, "Ellie." I said, "Yes, Mama." She said, "I was wrong." That was all. 3 words. I said, "I know, Mama," and I meant it every way a person can mean it. Mabel Hardin died a few years back. Her Earl had left her in 89. Her children did not come home for the funeral. 2 of them I do not think ever really came home again. I do not tell you this to shame Mabel. I loved Mabel. She just made a different bet. My bet was that 6 was not too many, that my mother was wrong, that the mill could take my husband, but it could not take my house. Tomorrow morning I'm going to make biscuits. I still make them the way Wanda Kemp taught me at Dots, buttermilk and self-rising flour, and a spoonful of Crisco off the top of the can. Becca is driving down from Athens for the weekend. She is bringing her boy, my great-grandson. His name is James, named for a man he never met. He is 7 years old. Last time he was here, he pointed up at the top of the refrigerator and he said, "Grandma, why do you keep an old coffee can up there with nothing in it but pennies?" I told him, "Sugar, that is the can I used to put my tips in when I worked at Dots. Every one of those pennies fed your daddy and your aunts and your uncles." He said, "Grandma, can I have a penny?" I said, "Baby, you can have all of them." He picked one out, just one. He put it in the pocket of his shorts. He said, "I am going to keep this one." Then he pushed the screen door open with his shoulder and ran out to catch a lizard on the porch railing. And that, right there, is the reason a woman gets up on a Tuesday morning in April and puts chicken thighs in a skillet and keeps living for 47 more years.